You've found your way to progressively older. Thanks for tuning in to Progressively Older. This is a place to be if you're getting older and staying progressive while you do. My name is Lincoln Eaton. You can call me Link. I'm the host of Progressively Older, and we hope to be part of your weekly experience for a very long time. Today we're going to be talking about whether there are any lines left to cross, and we're going to get to that in just a minute. But right now I just want to ask you, if you would, support this endeavor. Subscribe to the channel, like it, hit the notification bell when it comes up so we'll notify you when things are coming. We have a podcast, we have a YouTube channel, we have a website. We're on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. You can reach out to us at progressivelyolder@gmail.com. Be part of the conversation. Leave comments down below. We'll be responding to those. Hopefully have this become a part of your voice and what you're interested in hearing about and talking about. So leave comments. Let me know where we should be headed. On Wednesdays, we're going to be talking about becoming and remaining progressive and politics. And on Fridays, we'll be talking about getting older. Well, today is Wednesday. In 1861, John B. Clark, John W. Reed, and Henry C. Burnett were expelled from the United States House of Representatives for their support of the Confederate Rebellion. Oh well, timing is everything. Apparently, if they had just waited for today, they would have been seen as simply quirky. Leadership, true leadership, can have consequences. When Congress expelled these men from their midst before the Civil War actually broke out, there could have been no doubt that there would be massive fallout from that decision, that they had been elected by real people in Missouri and Kansas who would find the decision unacceptable. They made the decision anyway. I recently referred to when Johnson signed his Civil Rights Act of 1964. He knew the consequences ahead of time, that he had cut off the South from any Democratic influence for a generation and more, and he did it anyway. When John McCain faced a woman convinced his opponent was a secret Muslim with evil intent during a campaign town hall event, he calmly took the microphone away from the sad gaslit victim and said, "No."
I ask you a question. I do not I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not. No?
No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
As the exchange went out on the airwaves, Senator McCain had to know that a huge chunk of his support had just been sucked away in a flash. Trump's first salvo in the destruction of the Republican Party had been launched, fooling millions of people about the birth origins of Obama, but it was a tactic McCain refused to take advantage of. He would lead, and he would lose. In 1988, George H.W. Bush challenged us all.
My opponent won't rule out raising taxes, but I will, and the Congress will push me to raise taxes, and I'll say no, and they'll push, and I'll say no, and they'll push again, and I'll say to them, read my lips. No new taxes.
By 1990, the pressure to reduce the deficit became too great to ignore, And though he tried to negotiate with Congress to maintain his campaign pledge, in the end, he agreed to a compromise that would raise the maximum individual income tax rate from 28 to 31% and limit itemized deductions on high-income individuals, among other tax increases. With a stroke of a pen, he crippled his own political future and ended many of his congressional brethren's chances in the 1990 midterms. But he signed the Reconciliation Act anyway. He led, and he knew he would lose. True leadership is hard. It has consequences. Sometimes it's fatal, not just politically, but in real terms. The leaders of the civil rights movement in the 60s would attest to this. So would Abraham and John and Bobby. With great responsibility comes great risk, and true leaders know and accept this. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s last speech, he personified this for all time.
Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
He told the crowd in clear terms that his days were numbered, but the cause was worth it. He would press forward and pay the ultimate price the very next day. Which brings us to House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. A week after the January 6th attempted coup of the United States government by a tragically manipulated mob, McCarthy said,
"The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters."
That was a bold statement, a courageous step, considering the unhinged character of the base of his party. He flirted with leadership, with all of its attendant risks, setting a course for the reconstruction of a GOP that was rapidly becoming a civic threat. That same day, the AP led with a headline, "GOP support breaks." And even I was fooled, posting on here that there just might be an outbreak of decency in the body politic. Would Kevin McCarthy be the leader of a Republican atonement? But it just wasn't in his nature. The moment was simply too big for him, and he would reveal his true lack of character in a shockingly short amount of time. While the nation was revolted by the insurgency, polling showed that the Republican base was vehemently against impeachment. And so, in spite of finding the president culpable, McCarthy also came out against impeachment. The rapid testicular retraction was almost comical if the stakes weren't so high. Almost immediately, McCarthy would show he simply had no balls at all. Just over a week after pointing the finger at the president, he said,
"I don't believe he provoked if you listen to what he said at the rally."
Just a few days later, during an interview with Greta Van Susteren on Fox News, he retreated even further with, quote, "I also think everybody across this country has some responsibility," unquote. Shortly thereafter, he would fly off to Florida to meet with Trump, once again in the good graces of the insider-in-chief, to develop a Republican strategy to retake the House and Senate. With only 2 years to go to the midterms, that race has already begun. Meanwhile, other so-called leaders continue to court the rabid rabble. Senators Cruz and Hawley have not backed down from their calls for investigations into the viability of the election process, despite a complete lack of evidence for a problem existing in the first place. Their arguments, though, have nuanced differences. While Hawley has insisted that he is simply voicing the concerns of the electorate that he represents, thus avoiding personal responsibility for his role in the insurrection, Cruz has cleverly repeated that there have been an unprecedented number of accusations of voter fraud, and that requires a serious probing. Why clever? Because the wording makes his statement factually true. There have been an unheard of number of accusations of voter fraud, but they have not been connected to any evidence that the accusations have any credibility. Accusations are not justification for any kind of congressional action. Without a factual basis to them, they are ideological noise. Noise that McCain heard and rejected and tried desperately to lead his party back to credibility. He failed. McCarthy, Cruz, and Hawley all watched what happened to John McCain. It damn sure wasn't going to happen to them. The grand old party started to resemble the Terminator after being blown to bits. The scattered molten remains gradually found each other and recongealed into a unified evil force. And then came Marjorie Taylor Greene. Surely that would do it. I mean, if you took every batshit crazy conspiracy theory and wrapped it up in one big QAnon flag, out would tumble Representative Greene. Every frothing Karen and Ken have found their voice, from 9/11 to Parkland High School, Pizzagate to Jewish space laser-induced forest fires, from birtherism to false flag Vegas massacres, and so much more. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a perfect representative of her district, and she has no shame in being their voice in the United States Congress. In a speech on the floor of the House, she complained she was being silenced. In a speech, in a session of Congress. Silenced. It has been reported that this coming week, Kevin McCarthy is going to have a chat with her. Clark, Reed, and Burnett were expelled from the House for their support of the Confederacy. Michael J. Myers in 1980 and James Traficant in 2002, they were expelled for bribery. William D. Bynum and Thomas L. Blanton were both censured for using unparliamentary language. Bob Dornan was reprimanded for saying that Bill Clinton had given aid and comfort to the enemy in a speech on the floor. Joe Wilson for shouting liar during a State of the Union address. Laura Richardson for getting her staff to work on her campaign and do personal errands. Barney Frank for fixing parking tickets for a friend. McCarthy will meet with Greene. It is anyone's guess as to what will be said and what the upshot of that meeting will be. McCarthy is terrified of Greene's base, and Greene is proud of them. What the newly elected Congresswoman represents is the very part of the party that has made Kevin backtrack on his impersonation of a leader. He's been bounced violently by the thrashing bumpers in this political pinball game. It's impossible to guess where he will wind up next. Lines have been crossed. Or have they? Do lines exist anymore? When Trump bragged about fame being a free pass to sexual assault, we elected him. When he mocked a disabled reporter, many joined in the laughs. When he said there were very fine Proud Boys in Charlottesville, it was a blip, just a modest news day. When we died for lack of leadership, isolated from loved ones, we renominated him to represent a major political party. When he incited an attempted coup, we impeached him and most likely will find him not guilty. There are no lines left. While Democrats will continue to try to lead the country back to just bare bones sanity, Republicans desperately need to find a voice that can lead them. Someone that can hold the mirror up, expect greater things of their constituency, even if it means they lose everything themselves. Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? I'm Link. This has been Progressively Older.